at all times you have your family at the back of your mind for sure, your daughters, or are they not?
No, not for me. I very distinctly remember the day we were taking off from India to Nepal. I made it a point that I'll drop my daughter to a school because I was not sure if I would get another opportunity. But once you are there, the team is your family, because rather than your own safety, thinking about your family, you have to think about your team members' family. I think that's what the DNA changes once you're in the army. कल आप बंदे के साथ खाना खा रहे हैं, वो summit push पे गया आप यहाँ पे, and then he's not back. It scares you, but then you cannot show you're scared because your team is looking up to you as a team leader. If the team leader is shaken, the team is gone, man.
Welcome back to the Find Your Ultra podcast. Today's guest is retired Colonel Romil Barthwal. He's an endurance athlete who's run multiple marathons. He's run the coveted Boston Marathon. He's qualified for that. And he's also run the world's highest ultra marathon, the La Ultra 111 Challenge, and he's made a course record in the non-ladakh category. He's also run a 24-hour stadium run in which he covered 185 kilometers, and I think he was a podium finisher in that. He's also covered a half iron distance triathlon, and he's been to the most dangerous place on the planet, which is Mount Everest. He runs this venture called Boots and Crampons, helping people explore their adventurous sides and reach various mountain peaks, and in the process discover new potential, new strengths, and new meaning. What led him to all of this? Was he always a great runner? Or was he always adventurous? What was it like to lead a team to the top of the Everest? Let's find out all of these answers in this episode. So without further ado, let's dive right in. This is retired Colonel Romil Barthwal and me in the Find Your Ultra podcast, episode 37. Indulge away.
जय हिंद रोमिल सर.
जय हिंद.
और स्वागत है आपका फाइंड योर अल्ट्रा पॉडकास्ट में.
Thank you so much.
Sir, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I've been chasing you for how long now? Like, it's been months, right?
Yeah.
And finally I have you here. It's amazing. And I can't wait to dive deeper into all the things that we talked about before we started rolling. You've been an army officer. You're now an entrepreneur. There's a journey. There's a growth curve. There's a learning curve. I want to sort of tap into all of those aspects of your life. So before going to your childhood, let's begin with something unusual. Tell me, what's the thing was keeping you excited?
Great. First of all, thanks Vipin for calling me here. It's really a pleasure. I've been watching your episodes and I've been really touched and really happy that you're doing something as crazy as this.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Letting people know what all things happen in this world, and crazy things rather, I would say.
Means a lot, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So, first of all, there are a lot of things which I've been doing, but then I purely consider myself to be lucky. As my mother says, you're blessed, and I really agree to that. Generally, I would say whatever things I've done, so just that I've been lucky to get those opportunities of taking this forward.
Right. So what's keeping you excited these days? What's the...
See, to start with, for me, new things came the moment I left the army. I took the entrepreneurship route, and that was challenging because for me, outside world was kind of cut off being in the army. In the army, you don't interact much. It's need to know basis due to safety reasons and security. You don't want to, compromise. So startup has come as a big challenge. We've been learning a lot each and every day. Yeah. And that too an adventure startup in a place like India. And 2020 I was the initiation. COVID happened, so another challenge. And then mountaineering adventures, they bring new challenges each and every day, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Wow. So that's what's keeping you excited. That's what you're loving.
Yeah.
Great, sir. I want to dive into the army side of it as well. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's know a little bit more about you. Where were you born, raised, and what was your upbringing like? And then tell me more in detail about the decision to join the army, because that's not an easy one.
That's interesting.
Especially if you're the only child of your parents.
Yeah, I'm the only son. I have a younger sister.
Oh, yeah, only son.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in our case, we are from Uttarakhand, but my father shifted from the village to Delhi once he was a kid. So more or less Delhiite. As regards the background, we have very humble background. I mean, my grandfather was a class 4 employee in the government of India. My father really struggled. From the school days, he was working at a very early stage of his life. And with school, he used to manage work so as to be earning some amount and contributing to the family. So that's how it all happened. But then having said that, my parents, they never let us know that, there was some hardships they had to go through. My mother has been working since the time I've been born. She's been a teacher all through her life. She's retired now. And same my father, he retired. After that, again, he was working and he did very well in his life. So that's why we got a great upbringing, me, my sister, both of us. Born in Delhi, was in a very, very normal school. And after my 10th, my parents were, as all parents, they wanted the kids to do well. And that's why I got admission to one of the best schools in Delhi, which is in Lodi state, called Sardar Patel Vidyalaya. And there things changed. My exposure to the outside world was totally different, because till 10th I was in a school wherein ours was the senior most class. Once we were in 3rd, we were the senior most class. Then the school progressively, built it up till 10th. But after 10th I had to change. And then I got into Sardar Patel, got new exposure. After that, once you are in a school like Sardar Patel, you think you are champion, you'll get through engineering. I applied for all the engineering colleges. My parents thought, kuch kar lega achhe school mein, but then didn't work out at all. I couldn't get through any of the colleges. Somehow I applied for NDA. I don't know, it was not a plan which I thought I'll follow from, like childhood and all. At every point, every kid would have some time in life where the kid would think, I'll join the army or something. It was just that, not that any dedicated effort. NDA, I appeared, cleared, SSB, everything happened, and in one go I was inside the National Defence Academy in Pune. So that's how things happened. Pure luck, and I'm a firm believer of destiny, and this was my first step towards believing that.
Okay. And did you, like when you were applying to all these engineering colleges and you're not getting through, how did you deal with that? Or did you not think much of that at that age?
It's been logs, but then yeah, definitely you feel bad. And especially once you see all our classmates getting into big colleges and getting names. I got an admission in one of the DU colleges for the timing, but then soon I got through the NDA and I realized feeling of anxiety of not getting through anywhere and then making it to the NDA. I grabbed the first opportunity and I'm glad I did that.
Okay. But then once you got through, there would have been a decision point whether, would have been a discussion with the family as well. Because I mean, for civilians like us who've not had an exposure to that life at all, we've only seen in movies. So
yeah.
we all our images are from those Bollywood movies that we've seen.
Sure.
What is the life like? And did you not fear missing out on the regular life?
Yeah, that's a good one, because as I was mentioning, I'm the only son. My parents, complete civil background. No one from our family also far off was ever in the army. So they were very hesitant. And they always said from their side that anytime you want to come back, you can always come back. After 6 months of training, many of my family members thought that since I have a complete civil background and life in the army is completely different, physically demanding.
No family history of army officers. Huh?
Yeah. So that was a bigger challenge. And once I went there, I thought, let me push it. I didn't want to quit, because obviously there were a lot of challenges physically, mentally, and complete lifestyle was different. But then I took it as a challenge and I realized that, this is something, thing like army at a very basic stage, you are focusing on your health even if you don't want to, you have to be fit and all. So this thing happened that I thought this is one career wherein I'll be forced to stay fit, and in future also it will pay off, because health and all obviously takes priority in life. Coming on to a different topic, because once I was leaving the army in 2020, I had this option of joining a corporate or doing something on my own. So again this thing came that once I was 18, तब तो तुमने सोचा कि यार मेरे को fitness पे ध्यान देना है. Once you need it more, so obviously should do something which will make sure that you stay fit as you grow older. So that's why that fitness thing again was one of the decisions I thought I should take once I was joining the army.
So you always sort of had a good awareness of the importance of the fitness, like keeping your body fit, and that was one of the drivers for you to take that.
You can say that. Yeah, true.
Okay, that's great. And what were the early years in army like? Were there any moments when you really did feel like quitting and were on the verge?
Oh yeah, many a times. I'll not hesitate. Being a complete civilian, reaching the National Defence Academy, there were a lot of learnings, a lot of pain, and I took it as a challenge, every aspect, and as a learning. So I used to get punished every other day, by the seniors and all, and that is very normal. So every punishment I took it as if, it's a growth happening inside towards, more towards fitness or more towards your perspective towards life. So that kept me positive even once things were not in favor. So I'll narrate an incident wherein, so in India and all, there are common toilets, open bathrooms and everything. So once 3:34 I was up in the morning and I was in the bathroom, and then I realized where have I landed, having a cozy, comfortable life in Delhi, reaching there, and I was crying in the morning. So since, as I was mentioning, it was common toilet, one of my seniors came up and he asked me, what happened, why is it so? And I told him, for few days it is fine, one week, 10 days, but then this lifestyle is going to be there for life. Army life is not that after some days things are going to change. Right. And I don't think I'm up for it. And this senior of mine, he said, Romil, don't think too much. Enjoy the process. Take one step at a time, and think about smaller targets in life. And I'm sure you will succeed well. And somehow I've kept thinking on those aspects, thought about completing the training first, then focusing on other aspects. And that's really helped me in life in general, thinking about small packets, finishing those jobs, and then taking forward to rest of the bigger picture in life.
Like breaking it down in chunks and focusing on one at a time.
Exactly.
That's great, actually. That's life. I think life philosophy as well.
Yeah.
Great. So, did you start running long distances when you were in the army itself, or that happened after 2020?
Yeah. So long distance and all was never in the army. Army usually is 5 kilometers
5K,
and all.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you have cross country. Cross country runs are about 10 to 15.
Yeah.
See, the main aim of army is not to make you a runner as such. They want to play on your mindset, endurance and all. So at the first level, we would say endurance. The second level would be that mental strength you develop because of those challenges, be it cross country or be it run back. So they have a thing called run back, which would typically start in the evening at 4 and next day morning about 10 or 12 it will finish. So you'll have about 12-14 hours with complete backpack in unknown terrain, new areas wherein your maps and all you've not been there earlier, with weapons. So that gives you a lot of mental strength. So though you're not running always, you're walking, checking the maps, whether you're on the right direction, going to the checkpoints, getting the gears checked, answering all those questions which you're asked by the directing staff there. And then that gives you a lot of mental strength, because once you finish the whole thing, there's an obstacle course, then there's firing, and this is a very competitive event. And army competitive events are at a different level altogether. It's not that you go to a competition, you come back. You put your heart and soul, everything into it. So it's a very competitive event. So everybody gives their best. So that gives you that mental strength for running, long distance or ultras in later on in life. So that acts as a good base to pitch your life the way you want once you want to start something after that. So that was a basis on which ultra marathons and long distance runs started happening after I left army.
So you did them after you left army, because I think you've done some before 2020 as well.
Yeah. So what happened was I started running before that, but then that was all on my personal front, not from the army teams. So like 2012, I finished my IIT Kharagpur MTech and I got posted to Hyderabad. So once I reached Hyderabad, I found a great running group, and you know how community running and all happens, right? So once I was there, I met this Hyderabad runners group. And then I started long distance. Since, as I mentioned, the base was strong. Every day morning doing 5K or 7K. That base was there. So once I built on that base, and then the results were in short time, I got good results. And that's where Boston Marathon happened, and long distance marathons and all happened after that. So that's where these things happened. And then subsequently 2018-17, I ran the Boston. So the army noticed that. And then they gave me responsibility of training the army teams for triathlons, adventure triathlons they call it. Those are again a different level. Like in our case, it happened in Manipur. Not Manipur, it happened in Arunachal. So there was a cross-country run in the mountains. Then there was cycling, mountain biking. And after that was whitewater rafting. So, and as I was mentioning, the training was again different level, because the competition levels are difficult. So we trained very hard, and we happened to be runners up in that. Then that, since the army realized that we were giving good results, I got selected for the Everest. And then while preparing for Everest, I got into ultra marathons like La Ultra or Stadium Runs 24 hours and all. We happened there.
Of course. Correct. No, I first discovered you through WDR, the Study Runners group, because we live in a similar sort of a locality, and that's the running group that I discovered you through. Because when you summited also, I remember the chats in the group. We were all congratulating you, and even on social media. But you're saying La Ultra happened in preparation for the Everest.
Yeah, correct. So I was posted there. In fact, I still remember I finished my. I was doing the advanced course in mountaineering in the Siachen. So Army has a institute called Army Mountaineering Institute, which is in Siachen. So we can't have a better place than Siachen for a mountaineering institute. So my body was very well acclimatized. If you're at a higher altitude and you come and run ultra, so things become much easier compared to people who are coming from Delhi and reaching there. And I had finished a 7,000 meter climb there. Then I went for the advanced course. Then I came. So I happened to reach in the evening for the ultra, and next morning was the run. So they checked the medical parameters and all, and they said, what could be wrong in if you're coming from 7,000.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened.
And so you ended up creating a course record.
Yeah, so course record as regards the non-Ladakhis, because I was by that time the team captain for the Army Ultra Marathon team. So we had a team of 10 people who participated in that. Navy also had their participants. And then in non-Ladakhis, I was course record holder. I am for the 111. And then the Army team again, since the Army team and mostly were from Ladakh Scouts. So first 8 were from Army team out of the 10. So that's how it all happened.
Okay. So, I mean, this point onwards, your adventures get more and more serious.
Yeah.
So, before we go there, let's come back a little and talk about the family side of things. At what age did you get married, and tell us how many kids you have, how old they are now?
Yeah. So, I got married in 2003, and I don't know what kind of family I have, because they've been an amazing support. My parents, my wife, kids, they've really suffered a lot, because what we see is the outside picture of what I do. But the kind of pain they have gone through is much more, no mother or no wife would want their husband to do it. Going for Everest at the age of 43, you know how parents are now, right. Especially in a society like us. Yeah. We are not in US or some other country wherein it's very normal. In India, that doesn't happen. But then they've been a great support. They still are. Maybe they've given up on me. That is one reason. But yeah, I must say they've been rock solid support. I have got 2 daughters. Again, they've been very understanding that, early in the army, because I've been out for most of the time, training the army teams at different levels, and then preparing for Everest. So 1 year we were complete in Siachen and Ladakh training for Everest. And that's where the family suffers once they are, back home.
So tell me more about this moment when you decided to go for Everest. First of all, was climbing Everest always on your radar? Is that something that you always wanted to do? Or that just came up as you were taking your one step at a time and you just reached to that moment?
Yeah, so, in my case, had I planned anything in my life, I wouldn't have been as good as I am, what destiny took me. So Everest was obviously never in my mind. In my case, 1998, yeah. 98 was my first mountaineering expedition. I was in the IMA that time. And I've been a failure all my life before that, Right in academics, I passed as a 3rd division in NDA. And then after that, I tried my hand and running, I was horrible. I used to be last in my squadron of the National Defense Academy. So I thought, let me try in mountaineering. 98, I went for my first expedition as the IMA participant. And there, again, it was a failure. And then we lost one of our boys. He was a medical assistant with us. There was an avalanche at the summit camp and he died. And I was scared, a 20-year-old, 21-year-old seeking adventure in life and seeing, someone dying right in front. So I thought, adventure and all, let's have a cool, chill life rather than getting into something like that. So 98 to 2018, nothing happened in mountaineering. So I was always into running after my 2012 interaction with the Hyderabad runners. Boston Marathon happened, Ultras happened, triathlon happened. So then Army realized that, this guy is generally doing well in adventure. 2018, I was sitting in my office in Dehradun and then I see this letter saying that, Army is looking for someone to lead the team for Everest. And it was open letter to the various establishments. So I thought, वैसे भी मैं जा तो रहा नहीं हूँ, so let me just give my name. So I just gave a volunteer form and then I was called for the interview. During the interview, my boss told me, Romil, you've been doing good in leading various teams wherever you've been assigned. Would you like to go for Everest? And I told him, I said, sir, nobody will say no to Everest. In army mein kaun mana karega? So he said, okay, let's see. And then I still remember 22nd of May 2018. And there was a big conference in Dehradun and there it was decided that, the boss said, okay, Romil is going to lead our next year Everest expedition. And I was shocked. I was super happy, of course. Still, it was a dream because I was not basic course qualified till then. Okay. So I did my basic and all. So, and exactly 1 year after that, 22nd of May 2019, we were on top of Everest.
Oof.
So one complete year happened
Crazy. Right. So, but when these challenges come up, when these projects come up, what incentives do people have? Like, what incentive did you have apart from the personal challenge? Is there a compensation associated with these projects, or does it count towards your ranks and assessments?
No, for the personal challenge, that is the only thing. But that personal challenge supersedes anything else in life. We all know that. So it's just that, as far as rank and all is concerned, no, not for the officer level. For people who are below the officer rank, it helps them getting a promotion. So they have a policy saying that if you've done a 7,000 meters, you will get some incentive. If you've done a 8,000 or Everest, you get another incentive. But then army, as an officer, nothing at all.
Wow. Okay.
So it was only the personal high which you get.
Right.
That high becomes higher.
Yeah. And people watching on TV and in cinema, the movie Everest, it looks super scary. Recently an accident happened on Annapurna. We were communicating during that time, and I was checking with you on Anurag and what's the lady's name I'm forgetting? Baljit. Yeah, I was checking on these guys with you. And because I'm not even in this game, like this is not even my sport, but I somehow feel people like you are the bridge for us runners and endurance enthusiasts into the world of climbing, because some of you have gone that route, and a lot of people, once they've done a lot of ultras and stuff and they want to sort of experience something new and they get into climbing, you feel affected directly if something like that has happened, like you said, watching the death of a colleague very closely, very young, right? And I was discussing with Keshav Baji also around that time, and I remember making him a phone call and saying Anurag has gone missing, and because just before that incident happened, a few days ago I had seen Anurag's podcast interview, and I was listening to his plans, ambitions and whatnot, and here he was gone, and we were I was devastated. And I was discussing this with my wife, and she's like, this is just suicidal. Why do people do this? This is just so stupid, and this is self-inflicted. So मैंने कहा self-inflicted होता है, but then you also realize that whatever has to happen will probably happen sitting on a sofa as well, right? You will these guys, like Anurag is now thankfully back in good health. He's in Delhi right now for a small surgery again, and I'm going to be hopefully having him on the podcast sometime soon to talk about this. But he's now recovering and in good health, and he's already planning going back up on the mountains.
I'm sure.
So, someone who does not understand this would be like, ho kya raha hai? Kyun kar rahe hain ye log?
Of course.
So tell me a little bit about that craziness, that high. What is it about climbing that has that appeal?
Yeah, true. So it's, as I was mentioning, one step at a time. So you take nobody thinks of Everest the first instance. So they think about, let's say running. So they'll do a 5, then they'll do 10, marathon, ultra. So that comes as the next step automatically. So the way you were saying that, ultra runners would have more probability of getting into these things because they've already experienced the high of an ultra, right? So next step would be, once you're done a few of them, that's why we have this summit run, that was the reason we started summit run, because to bridge the gap between runners and adventure enthusiasts climbing that level.
So I want to know more about the Indihar run and a couple of other things that you do, but let's talk about that in a separate section when we'll talk about Boots and Crampons. I want to know a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey as well.
Sure.
But sticking to the subject of Everest, I mean, I've skipped ultra running and all of that scene, but we'll come back to that in a second. Tell me about the Everest. When you knew that you're leading the team, what was the conversation like at home?
So I'll be very candid. There was no conversation at home. I didn't inform my parents. I didn't inform anyone. I didn't have the cheek to tell them that, because on one side, it was the ultimate I could do in my life, I thought, being on top of Everest. I was getting this opportunity. And I couldn't tell my parents because I knew their reaction would be... So I told them that since I was already training teams for the adventure events, I told them I've got an assignment for, mountaineering, training the team for mountaineering in Ladakh. Okay. So that's why we went for Ladakh. But however, I didn't know that my neighbor was again in the army. So my mother happened to meet my neighbor who was again in the army, and he asked them about preparation for Everest. That's how the parents came to know. And the strange part is, I told my daughter, elder one, that Aaron, I am going for Everest, and she said, Papa, aaj kisko befu bana rahe ho? Because I had not told her candidly, and there was no discussion happening. I was actually very scared telling them, because I knew as a typical parents, nobody wants their kids to go for Everest that time. And they had this blockage in their mind, if somebody has to go to Everest, they should be in their 20s or 30s. Why should somebody in 43, 44 should go into it? So I knew that I had to do it, because after your ultras and all,
why is that? Why is that assumption? Are they more like you're fitter in your 20s and that's why you have a better chance of climbing and coming back? Is that the assumption?
That's what the parents would feel, that अपना ही बेटा क्यों जाएगा? बाकी और young बंदे हैं, let them go. Why should you be there? So that's what their mindset was. And I don't blame them because, they don't have any background at all on this.
Yeah.
And it was difficult for them to take it, but then they realized, and I could play around saying that, it's an army responsibility. So it's less of an adventure and more of a assignment which is given to us. So that's why finally it happened.
Okay. So how old are your daughters?
So my daughter, elder one, she started her first year now in the college.
Okay.
The younger one, she's in class 7 still.
How old are you?
I am 47.
47.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So that's in 7 years, there's a lot of work to do.
Oh my God.
Okay. So you told your daughter and she said, so she didn't believe you. But
She couldn't believe, obviously, because mountaineering was, as I said, never in my scheme of things which were happening. I was posted in the special forces that time, and I used to be out on some assignment or the other. And this happened to be, I was in Ladakh and we were preparing for Everest. So one complete year we dedicated for training the team for Everest. Okay. So that's what I told my boss. He told me that, Romil, you will lead the Everest. I said, okay, I lead, but then I don't have any experience on mountains. My only experience was 98. This was 2018. So I said, 20 years I've not done anything on the mountains. I know how to plan things based on, my experience of training the teams into adventure. But for this, I'll have to get my basic course done, advanced course done. So he said, from our side, there's nothing stopping, do whatever we want. We just want success in this line. That's what, army is all about.
Yeah.
So I was lucky. I got one complete year. So we had one big army truck. You've seen, 3-ton, 4-ton vehicles. 3 of us used to sit in front. We used to have all our rations, tents, all our stores behind, all our teams behind. We used to take it anywhere in Ladakh, pitch it, climb wherever we could find any mountains around, uproot the tents, go to a new place. So 1 year we did only that, including about 4 to 5 months in Siachen, training for the army expedition.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad you went well prepared, because a lot of Everest tourists don't go there well prepared. Yeah. So take us to the Everest. Please tell us about the experience. So you reached the base camp and to the summit. What's the journey like?
Okay. Before that, I'll share something which I find very typical with the mountaineering community.
Sure.
So like marathons, after 32 kilometers, nobody enjoys. It's more of a struggle. But the moment you finish it, you sign up for the next one. That's what happens. Mountaineering, exactly the same thing happens. Once you're climbing, you're cursing yourself. Kahan phas gaye? Kahan mar gaye? So I remember my first climb was Stoke Kangdi. And I badly underestimated it. I thought I've been in the army for 25 years. Special forces ka team hai. Ye to aise hi ho jayega. Ultra marathon humne kiya hai bhai. The moment I was climbing, I was saying, yaar, what have I done? What have I signed up for? I'm not up for it. So I was always cursing myself every step. The moment I reached the top of Stoke Kangdi, that was my first summit as a team leader. So the moment I reached the summit, what happened was, मैंने कहा photo अच्छा आएगा Instagram में, टोपी ओपी उतारा, photo लिया, and within minutes it hit me altitude, and I could see that I was getting dizzy. Wow. So my teammate tied me up, बांधा, because all of them were super duper fit. Okay. I was the weakest link in the team, just that. So they got me down, chai vai pilaya. Once I had more fluids, so I was back in senses. This thing happened in my first climb. Second climb was 7,000 meter. Again, while climbing up, I said, yaar, in the previous climb, I had decided I'll quit. But then yahan fir that kutte ki poonch wala feel tha hu. Fas gaye wapas. Yeah. So same thing happened. 7,000 meter, I'm climbing. Every time I was cursing. And then at the summit, everything changed. And then I came for the next climb.
Stoke Kangdi, what's the altitude like?
Stoke Kangdi is a serious climb. People underestimate it big time.
So you just opened my eyes, because I used to believe that to jaake kar denge usme
no, it's not.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
That's an eye opener, right? So it's a good eye opener for you early on in the game, training for Everest, because from now you can't take altitude lightly. Yeah. No matter how much.
And now I can relate to it, because now we have a commercial team which is there joining us. They would say, Romil sir, chalte hai na aaji. And I tell them, hold your horses. Time will come. You will get your due. And now I can relate, because I've gone through that situation. So Stoke is a serious climb, 6,153 meters. And for that matter, any 4,000 meter climb is also challenging. In mountains, nothing is easy.
Right.
And so Stoke ke baad 7,000 happened. Then we were well prepared, army team, special forces, 1 year completely dedicated. But the moment I reached Namche mein you see, Namche is a village in Nepal once you start the trek. The moment you see Everest, you are, wow, kya socha tha yaar, ye chadne hai, kaise koi chadega, in spite of all that training. And I couldn't believe that we'll climb it. But then that same thing, one step, don't focus on, keep the bigger picture in mind, but then take small steps, believe in the process. And once I was climbing Everest, मैंने कहा अब तो हो गया, इसके बाद तो कभी पहाड़ को देखना भी नहीं है. And then Boots and Crampons happened. So destiny that way, you can never predict anything. Yeah. So Everest was challenging, yes, like any other mountain.
How big was the team that you were leading?
That's again interesting. One, because we started with 110 people, and there was a selection. We cut short teams at every climb. We reduced the number of people. Finally, 20 of us went there. Out of which 14 climbed, 6 were for the base camp stuff.
Okay. But 14 who wanted to do the Everest did it, all of them?
Yeah, 14, 100% summit, all of them went. In fact, there were 17 people who died in that season on Everest. And there were a lot of amputations and a lot of foreign armies, they had also come. And that's where, the Nepal government wrote to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister called us. We had a meeting. He congratulated, a lot of discussions. And, obviously the proud moment that all 100%. And more important than that, no, not a single person had any injuries or scratches once they came back. So that was a proud feeling, I would say.
Yeah. But can you describe to us a little bit about the hostility of the terrain there and some of the most challenging parts? And can you talk us through a little bit about that and where it's most challenging? And were they during the summit, during the climb, were there any parts where some of the people found it very challenging and wanted to quit and stuff like that? Is it?
No, as I was mentioning, I was the weakest link in the team. So my team was superhuman people. So they were better than Sherpas in a few instances. And so whatever problem was there was with me, because I was the one who was struggling, pulling them back. And so as regards the team is concerned, I couldn't have asked for anything better. And army teams that way, are very, very well prepared. So that was not a challenge. Only thing was, my challenge was because I was less fit than them. So, and the terrain challenges obviously. So there's a place called Khumbu Icefall. So Khumbu is a huge area wherein pillars of ice are there, very uneven places, crevasses. And the challenge is you cannot rest once you're crossing Khumbu, because any pillar of ice can fall anytime. And every year, a lot of people, and they die there because of some ice fall falling or some people not being fit and not making it up, some crevasse incident or something. So in the whole world, it's one of the dangerous places to be in. And that's why you don't want to cross there and take rest in between. So the moment you start your climb, you just finish it. That is one area. And then there's a thing called death zone, which is after 8,000 meters, it starts. And they say, if you're not doing anything, if you're just sitting like this, your body is eating itself. So you're just moving towards death if you're not doing any action, if you're not working hard enough, your heart is not pumping. So that's a challenge. And so I'll tell you this instance. We were on that death zone, and I was leading the team was coming behind me. There was this guy sitting there, and I knew that in death zone you're not supposed to sit, you've got to keep moving, because heart rate agar kam hoga to oxygen kam supply hoga, your body will keep shutting down. So I went up to this guy, maine usko bola, maine kaha, come on man, let's go, because I'm sure you're tired, but you have to move otherwise. And then somebody from a distance tells me ki, sir, he's been sitting there for past 3-4 days. So this guy sat down, never got up. So once you see
he was actually a dead
body. A dead guy. So there everything happens on a rope. So you'll have dead bodies tied to the rope only, because apni jaan ki padi rehti hai, who will go and unrope someone or take the person down. So dead bodies and all, nobody gets them back unless you're super rich. It becomes expensive. So there are about 250 odd dead bodies there, but jab aap first time dekhte ho, then it hits you that it could be you. And in army, it could be any of your team members, because army is all about ownership. My funda was clear. If anything goes wrong with me, I'm responsible. But then if anything goes wrong with the team, I'm responsible, not them, because I'm a team leader. So that you don't want to carry, that you carrying dead body of your teammate to their home, to their parents, saying that your son was my responsibility or your daughter was my responsibility and I messed up. So that obviously is not acceptable at all. So that burden you can't carry. So those things happen, and that increase the magnitude of challenge. Like you were saying, ultra marathons. Anything goes wrong in ultra, you can stop.
Yeah.
You can ask for a rescue vehicle or anything. Yeah. Everest, nobody is going to come you and rescue you. You have to come back on your own, especially once you're in the dead zone. So it's everything on your own. And people say it becomes too selfish there, because there have been instances wherein people step on you and then move forward. And that's how life is. Everybody comes with that frame of mind who is doing something like in Everest.
Like, so you can't afford to be emotional there.
Yeah.
You have to Look after yourself first.
Correct. It's not practical to be emotional. That the way they say on the flight, in case of an breach of, that any leakage happens, you have to protect yourself first, then give oxygen to others.
दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करें.
Similar.
Right. So these are crazy zones. And then how many base camps are there? 4.
So there's one base camp, which we call the Everest base camp. Then you have camps. Camp 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And the interesting part which generally people not aware is that it's not just you go to the base camp, you go to camp 1, 2, 3, 4. So what you do is you acclimatize, which means to adjust your body to lower oxygen levels. Okay. So you go to the base camp. Then after a few days of recovery, you go to, let's say, half of camp 1 and come back so that the body understands that oxygen level is less. So it automatically makes the adjustment. Then you come down. Then you go to camp 1. Then you'll come back to the base camp. Then next time you'll go to camp 1, you'll go to camp 2. Then again you'll come to the base camp. Then you go to camp 1, 2, and then you go to camp 3. तुम्हें पता है ये summit ऊपर है. But then because the process is that you got to come from camp 3 to camp 2 to camp 1 and then to the base camp. So that repetition takes a lot of time. Otherwise, in one go you could do in 5 days. But then your body will not be able to adjust to lower oxygens.
What did Killian do? What the hell did he do? Like, I think he climbed in one go, right?
Yeah, Killian. So what he acclimatizes first, and then he goes for the summit push. Like for Everest also, you acclimatize till camp 3 and come back, and then final summit push is 5 days, going back and coming.
Right.
But then it doesn't mean you start at day 0 and then finish and come back in 5 days. So you can acclimatize and then you can come back and then you can run up. So acclimatization is standard for everyone.
That's how he did it?
Yeah.
And how many hours would you remember Killian on it?
See, a lot of people have different stories behind it. Okay. So, mountain stories
let's not.
But I think it's about 17 hours or something what they claim. I'm not too sure.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's also a superhuman. That's true. So it's sort of difficult to discount anything.
True.
But yeah, so from camp 4 to the summit, that's after you acclimatize enough.
So after you acclimatize enough, you start from base camp. You go to camp 1. Then you go to camp 2, spend the night camp 2. Yeah. Next day you go to camp 3, spend the night at camp 3. Then you go to camp 4 in the afternoon. Night you go for the summit push. Come back from summit to camp 4, camp 3 and camp 2. And then base camp.
So coming back also is one go, or do you stop at different camps? Like
you'll have to stop, because otherwise you got to be a superhuman. That you start from camp 4, go do the summit and come to the base camp.
And I've heard most of the deaths happen while coming down. Is that
true?
Also true? Why is that?
So this is again interesting. We were at the summit, we were at the base camp, and then we knew that there was some summit window and there was some teams going up. So there was this guy from Gurgaon. He was going, and we were at the base camp that time. He was going for the summit push, and we came to know next day that he's no more. So how it happened was, he was coming down from the Everest, and as I was mentioning earlier, there are ropes tied there. So the rope is there. You're supposed to have a harness, and with a carabiner, you hook onto that safety line, and you come down. So you have to do it time and again. After 50 meters, you'll have an anchor. You have to unhook and then hook it up again. So once you come down from Everest, you're not looking up to the summit. Summit ho gaya. So generally people think ki summit ho gaya, that means you're done. So this guy, after the summit, he was coming down. It's kind of, you let the guard down, thinking ki the major part is over, not realizing that cumulative fatigue is going on and on and on. So while coming down, he thought he had anchored to the safety line, his harness as well as the safety anchor.
Right.
And you're supposed to ensure it as a drill. But then since you do it so repeatedly, you tend to get relaxed. So he thought he had anchored it, and it didn't actually anchor. And then he slipped, and there was nothing to hold him back. So he was kind of gone. And we were at the base camp that time with the complete team. So
yeah, I was just going to ask, because you mentioned 17 people died in the same season.
Yeah.
And as you were climbing up, you were hearing these different news.
Yeah.
What does that make you feel like? Did at any point, of course there would be no doubts, because you're all army folks and you're steadfast in your belief and ability to do it.
Right.
But फिर भी डर तो लगता होगा.
Yeah, obviously, you'll, because
you at all times you have your family at the back of your mind for sure, your daughters, or are they not?
No, not for me.
Wow.
I thought that, so I mean, I can go on and on, because these stories are lots of them.
Let's hear them. This is what I'm here for.
So since you picked this up, I very distinctly remember the day we were taking off from India to Nepal. I made it a point that I'll drop my daughter to a school, because I was not sure if I would get another opportunity. So I still remember I clicked pictures. Sometimes on the Google Photos it comes as a throwback.
Wow.
So yeah, those things are there. And so once we went there, it was obviously challenging for everyone, for the kids as well. So I remember that incident once you mentioned about thinking about family. But once you are there, the team is your family, because rather than your own safety, thinking about your family, you have to think about your team members' family. I think that's what the DNA changes once you're in the army, that, you worry about your team, their families, and more than about you. So it comes a challenge because कल आप बंदे के साथ खाना खा रहे हैं, वो summit push पे गया, आप यहाँ पे, and then he is not back. So that happens. It scares you, but then you cannot show you're scared because your team is looking up to you as a team leader. If the team leader is shaken, the team is gone, man. That's how it happens. So you have to be bold. Whatever, the tough talking you have to do, you go back to the tent and then do your introspection talk. But then the moment you're out of the tent, you are a different person.
Amazing. What's this mindset like? It's crazy. So I'm assuming this is the battlefield mindset. Is it similar to, you've been in war situations, battle situations?
Yeah, so you touched the point. So 1998 December, I got my commission in the army. So I was posted in Jammu Kashmir with the infantry unit. And Nowshera. So we're just on the border, right? So we could, if we are speaking like this, we could, draw attention of fire from the enemy because it was that loud, to the enemy. And then I was in the market, Nowshera market, and then we were seeing the television saying that, Kargil war had started officially because the air attacks and all had happened. So we were on the border that time once these things happened, and that was me. I was still in a safer area. I had a lot of coastmates who were at Kargil and bang opposite to the enemy, and that's where we lost a lot of coastmates. So yesterday we completed 25 years of a service, Silver Jubilee we had. And then we were remembering of all those coastmates who trained with us for 4 years, somebody your roommate, somebody your squadron mate, somebody trained at someone your classmate. So like Vijayan Thapar and a lot of people we get to know about in the first 6 months of their army life, we lost them. Very, very close friends, brothers more, because as I was mentioning, more of a family
that
there.
Becomes your family because you're spending so much time with them.
Correct. Right. So that war situation taught us a lot of things about life in general, that and that's where you start believing more towards spiritualism, destiny and all, rather than thinking about that if you do this then this might happen. A lot of things have happened already.
We're going a little bit here all over the place, but I'm actually liking this. Please tell me, do you remember the first time you got this sort of a shock? Like was it during that attack, or when you maybe lost somebody, like first time you lost somebody, a colleague or somebody, and what did that make you feel?
Yeah, so I was posted in a place called Manjeet. Manjeet is a forward post in Nowshera, very close to the enemy. So generally you keep officers at those areas which are more vulnerable on attack and such certain things. So there was no communication, there was no mobile phones or anything. So somehow I came to know that during the war, one of my classmates and a dear friend Sumit, he died. Before that we kept on hearing somebody dying, happens in the army once you're there. But then somebody so close, classmate, and you've had some very close bonds with them. And that then struck me that, it could be any of your teammates or you at any point of time. And that's where my parents again, I'm still okay because I'm in the front and my parents not able to talk to me, and all the media everywhere, Kargil war and all those things happened. So it was a difficult time for them, but then prepared them well for what life is all about in the army, and that's why in adventure and all I think that carried forward.
So yeah, let's just go back to the Everest for a bit because we didn't complete that story. So when you were, let's say, on one of these camps, Camp 3, Camp 4, Camp 2, and you're hearing stories of these people passing, and you still have to do the summit, right? And you said like you can't show weakness to the team.
Yeah.
How does because you're a human, right? And we're all humans. Like at some level, we're all similar, each one of us, right? Yeah. How does one develop that sort of a mindset of being tough in situations where you're feeling not so tough?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. For me, I think it was easy because the army training helped you, and the kind of experience, be it, Kargil war or the adventure sports I was part of, that gave me that preparation for the bigger challenges like Everest and all. So that way I've been lucky that Kargil war happened. Then NDA training, of course, one of the difficult times in life, and the training in the Indian Military Academy. Then seeing a dead person during an adventure, and way back once I was 21. So all these things make up your personality to handle situations which would make life challenging otherwise. So for me, I would say I was blessed and lucky to have gone through that training, and that's how it all happened, that we could push in spite of such challenges happening in life.
So yeah, and when the last push came for the summit, what was that like? What was the feeling going to the summit and on top of the world?
See, Vipin, I can go on for days or months speaking about it. So
I'm just so fascinated. I'm pretty sure the audience will love it too.
Okay, sure. So Everest summit, that was the year wherein there's this photograph by Nirmal Purja wherein a long queue is there, people waiting in the queue for reaching the summit because there were so many people and the summit window was less. So what generally happens, most of the summits happens in May and May end generally. So if you're lucky, you'll get 2 to 3 windows. Windows means number of days.
Right.
So sometimes it can be 5 days. So if there are 5 days, the number of people gets distributed in those 5 days.
Okay.
If there's only 1 or 2 days, then the congestion will be more because there's only one route. So ours was a typical case wherein the number of days for the summit was less of good weather. On bad weather, nobody can summit. Whoever you are, if the weather is bad, mountain gods won't allow anyone to climb up. And nobody takes that chances, not for smaller mountains, leave alone for Everest. So once you have a shorter window, we realized that there will be a lot of people who will be climbing. So let's start a bit early. So generally Everest push would start about 9 or 10 in the evening. So we decided we'll start at 7. The moment we came out of the tent at 7, we realized we are not the only smart ones. People are there. They started moving at 5 o'clock in the evening. Once that happened, we were shocked. हमने कहा ऐसे तो कैसे होगा? Because you have to ration your oxygen. It's not that you can go on for infinite number of hours or something. So
all the camps have spare oxygen available?
No. So what happens, depending on the level of preparation, you start using oxygen as late as possible.
Okay.
The problem is if you start using at camp 1, you cannot remove in camp 2 because your body is not adjusted to lower oxygen.
Right.
So एक बार लगा दिया तो लगा ही दिया. Then you cannot remove. So we delayed it as much as possible, and by camp 4 we started using it. So once we were moving up, we realized there was a long queue of people already there, and there's only one rope. And if we follow the rope one behind the other, then we are using oxygen and we are not moving. So that means rationing will be going haywire. So what we thought, let's do something. We unhooked from the rope, and because of so much of experience, obviously this is not recommended for people who are not that experienced. But then with the confidence army gave us, we unhooked from the rope and started overtaking everyone. And that's how by the time we reached the summit, we were the first few ones to reach there. So I still remember the moment I was climbing, first few hours of climb, I would say, my head was, throbbing, I could see it, because that altitude body is not used to. So head was in deep pain. The oxygen was obviously less because you don't want to keep it at the higher flow rate because oxygen is limited. So oxygen was less. I had not had a good sleep. Nobody gets a good sleep by the time you reach the summit. Loss of appetite, weakness, heavy load on the backpack. So any reason which you want to look for coming down, you have all the reasons to turn back. Weather is also, उस altitude में weather is also गड़बड़. So everything which could go wrong was, pulling you down. And I distinctly remember, I knew that, आज का ही दिन है wherein you have to prove yourself. It's like your ultra marathon, you're preparing for years and years, and the final day is the time wherein things will go wrong, but you have to tell कि यार आज गड़बड़ नहीं हो सकता. Because back at your home, your parents, your family, your friends, everybody is praying कि यार आज summit push पे जा रहे हैं, और generally everybody is on the summit, so have good wishes of all those people. So आज nothing can go wrong. So you start with that, and things do go wrong, because I remember there's this place called balcony, and from there you take a detour. वहाँ पे जाके you change the cylinder.
Okay.
And
so Everest पे there's a place called balcony.
Yeah, they call it balcony. I mean, it's not a balcony, and then they call it. वहाँ पे मैं गया, वहाँ पे इस ऑक्सीजन सिलेंडर चेंज करने के लिए मैंने निकाला, एंड मैं निकाल रहा हूँ, उसके थ्रेड्स अंदर नहीं जा रहे बिकॉज उसमें रेगुलेटर होता है. यू रिमूव द सिलेंडर, टेक आउट द अदर सिलेंडर, यू फिक्स द रेगुलेटर ऑन दैट. सो मैं उसको लगा रहा हूँ, रेगुलेटर से वो थ्रेड ही नहीं घुस रहे. मैंने कहा यार, एंड इफ द ऑक्सीजन सिलेंडर नॉट एबल टू डू इट, देन ऑब्वियसली यू टर्न बैक. एंड I realized, I was so in panic, डर गया था अंदर कि नहीं होगा तो क्या होगा, and I was not that confident. And this is in spite of the fact that base camp you tie your face with everything, close your eyes and then practice all this, because that situations will go wrong like this, and still things were not happening, but finally it happened, and that way we climbed, and by the time sunlight happened we were on top of the summit, amongst the first few people to reach the summit that day.
And how long does one stay there?
So Everest summit is the highest altitude you've ever been in life, of course, you know, because that altitude.
It's the highest place on earth.
Yeah. And that is also the closest to Bhagwan. Right?
Correct.
So Bhagwan ke paas se zyada,
metaphorically, yes, in every way.
You cannot go closer. So you don't want to spend more time there. So ideally people would want to stay more time, spend time. But as a team leader, my job was to get them back safe. Then is the expedition successful.
Right.
Not the summit.
Correct.
So the moment we reached, I was after my team. Ki bhaiya bhago. Fatafat click photographs and turn back, because till the time you reach base camp, it's not safe.
Correct.
Right? Anything can go wrong. Your oxygen, your equipment. So we must have stayed about 5 minutes or 8 minutes there on the summit. And we said, let's rush back. Right. That's not the place to enjoy or spend time. But that feel is, you are actually on top of the world, as they say it. You can feel it, everything down below.
And like you said, the sun was out, and could you see, was there a view?
Yeah, so what happens is you can see the curvature of earth from that altitude. So it's not what we see the sun here. You can see the earth in that shape, sun coming out, and you can see, as a curvature of earth, sun coming out of that. Amazing feeling. But then unfortunately you cannot cherish that feeling for long, because you have to come back safe to the base camp, but that's a great feeling.
But that stays with you.
Oh, of course, always.
And just, this is a very novice and stupid question, but how big is so once you summit, मतलब जो हम देखते हैं photos में तो छोटा सा ही area दिख रहा होता है, and the camera angles are also such that so you is there a lot of flat area where you can easily stand and take pictures and
luckily for Everest you have enough space to accommodate enough people there, but then at any point of time you're tied to the rope. Rope छोड़ के तो आप कहीं निकल नहीं सकते. That means you're dead the moment you're out. So you're always tied to the rope. So you're generally in that vertical line only, one straight line. Everybody is tied together, and you click the photographs, finish the job, because once you come back, you have to show that photograph as a proof. Then only you get the certificate. So the aim is to click the photographs and come back. And unfortunately, at those temperatures, those altitudes, your batteries also give away. So you have to make sure you're carrying supplement batteries and keeping them warm at those altitudes.
And was the climb down much of a thing? Was that very risky and adventurous, or?
Personally, I would say I was closest to death once I was coming down. Again, the same thing, So as I was mentioning, that was the busiest day. A lot of people. So we could get over these people by overtaking once we were climbing up. But while climbing down, it had to be the same route, same rope. And we waited for about half an hour thinking that, these people have worked so hard, let them come up. But then we realized, it was never ending. People were coming one after another, and we couldn't have been waiting there for, and we were obviously using the oxygen at that altitude, and that the level was depleting. Once that happened, we realized we have to go down. So there happened that jostling, people coming up, going down, and everybody at that altitude is irritated because your brain is not getting enough oxygen, right? So these people who are coming up, they have that thing called summit fever. For them, that is the only thing which matters in life, nothing else. Because they've spent so much of energy, effort, everything for being there. So they were coming up, we were to go down because अपनी तो जान पे बना रखी थी. And the jostling happened and all.
So कैसे मतलब एक के बाद एक लोगों ने पकड़ी हुई रस्सी और आप ये पकड़ रहे हो, then you crossing a person and then holding on to again उनके बीच में ऐसे.
Correct.
Or how are you doing?
So what happens? You carry 2 safety anchors. एक जैसे यहाँ पे है, one safety anchor is here. This is the other person. So what you do is you tie the safety anchor to that person, and then you take this out and tie it to the rope in front, and that's how you keep moving. So it's a laborious process because बार-बार ये करना, it becomes irritating, मैं आप पे anchor बांध रहा हूँ, आपको अपना चढ़ना है, मैं आपको परेशान कर रहा हूँ. It's kind of that. So that's where it happens. Once or twice I slipped, and then once you slip, then I'm pulling you down as well, and then I'm grappling to come back again. And this is after, that severe climb of the summit. So that was challenging, of course, but then...
So when you slip, it must be really scary.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little bit.
Yeah. But then you slip and you're tied up.
You're tight, but still.
Yeah. And because it's treacherous, you don't know how deep you're going to go. बहुत ही नहीं ज़्यादा मतलब ना, those are steep places. So that's how it happened. And then the worst part was, after some time I realized my oxygen mask was not giving me the oxygen. Because either it had choked or the oxygen we had already utilized. I still don't know कि क्या था. And I told my Sherpa, he was also extremely tired by that time. So he was also not in a position to help me out. So we realized, आज तो यहीं पे लगता है, we'll have to call it a day. Because oxygen, if you're not getting, you're dying. And every step was becoming more and more difficult. On top of that, you're getting slightly snow blinded because visibility was going bad in the eyes. And then we realized oxygen khatam ho raha and we had to cover a lot of distance. And that's where, again, the spiritual thing. Before going for Everest, we had visited His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he had blessed us. And he gave us this thread, which I always wear around my neck. So this is the thread. I hope it's not disturbing the mic. So this thread, I was wearing it, and once I was coming down, I touched it, and I felt it that, till the time this is there on my neck, things will be fine. And after some time, one of my team members who was, super solid, he came up, he asked me, sir, what's wrong? I told him, I think I'm done with my oxygen. And this guy had a spare oxygen cylinder with him because he was strong, he was on a lower flow rate. And he gave me his oxygen, and then it was a different world altogether. Once you start getting oxygen, and then we came down, falling, whatever, but then made it to the summit camp and things were fine again.
That's
so
amazing.
That's where things change.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, once you're back, so you would rest at Camp 3, 403 first, or?
So in my case, we were 14 members. So I was leading a team of 8. I had distributed the team into 6 with my deputy leader.
Okay.
Thinking that, in case the weather goes wrong, if I'm going up, then we have a second team which will make it. So ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि आर्मी टीम विदाउट एवरेस्ट करके वापस आ गई. So even if one team fails, the second team has to go up. Right. So once we came down, I sent my 7 people back to Camp 2, and I stayed at Camp 4 because my second team was going up, and I wanted to coordinate their move with the help of radio set so that in case anything goes wrong, we can go for rescue and manage the team over there. So that's why the team went back to Camp 2, and I waited for my next team to come after the summit at Camp 4, and then we moved forward back to Camp 2 the next day.
Leader's life.
You don't have an option once in the army.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, mad respect for everything that you do and the armed forces and all the forces that do for us.
Yeah.
Crazy. What a ride. I mean, I've really enjoyed this. It's been like, it's been better for me than watching the movie Everest.
Thank you.
That's great. Wonderful, sir. And so we haven't talked about your running journey at all. But before that, tell me, what did the family feel like about you climbing the Everest? What were the people's reactions? What were your colleagues' reactions? Parents, family, everybody?
See, for the family, the importance was that I was back. Rather than for them, summit and all, it doesn't matter. Right. For them, it's only ki beta वापस आ गया, husband वापस आ गया, kids are there. So that obviously very euphoric. There was a huge number of people, friends, family, and office people who had come to receive at the airport, and that feeling was different. Making charts and all. So you could sense it once you're there. So that was a great feeling. My parents obviously feel proud of all these things, because considering that nobody in the army, adventure and all, we were nowhere related at all ever. So it was a big thing, and I'm glad that they supported me after that as well, knowing that once you have done Everest, you have developed that confidence that other climbs and other things I could do my part well. So that's been a great journey. Same from the friends and all, a lot of support. And your friends and all are also happy that you've achieved something, you've led the team with success. So great support and great feeling, obviously.
And so once this was done, do you now plan to go back up there or any other 8,000 meters?
See, since we are recording, I'll keep my answer reserved, because never know who from my family is watching it. Okay. So I'll keep that reserved. But yeah, if we have a team, we'll surely support. We have already been mentoring a lot of people for bigger climbs. This year, one of my students who is also from the army, he went and did Everest and Lhotse with us. Okay. So we have already a lot of people who are at different levels of preparation for the final summit to Everest or for other big mountains. So yeah, we feel proud that we are able to contribute in their dreams coming true.
Okay. And so this naturally leads us to Boots and Crampons, your entrepreneurial journey. That's another Everest to climb, isn't it?
It is
kind.
at times more difficult.
Yeah. So what's that been like? Did you always wanted to like start your own thing, or did that come along? How did Boots and Crampons happen?
So what happened was I was 2019 leading the Everest, and there I met this guy Bharat. So Bharat is my partner in Boots and Crampons. So he started the company in 2017. So he was leading a team on Mount Lhotse, and both the Everest and Lhotse have the same base camp. So we spent a lot of time together, and the mindset we found in each other was very much akin to what we wanted to do in life. The thought process of how to make mountaineering big and accessible to people in India, and proper guidance and all. So we were in sync as regards our mindset was concerned. So after Everest, I realized with the kind of seniority I had in service, 22 years, I won't go back to the field kind of a work. I would mostly be in the headquarters, planning and strategy kind of a roles, which somehow I couldn't relate because I was mentioning there was no fitness, always on computers, that thing. And I realized, I might not be able to do justice on what I want in my life. So that's when me and Bharat, we decided that, we'll do it together. And that's where I got into my company as a partner. And since then we've been, madlessly climbing one mountain or the other. So on a monthly basis, we are climbing 2 summits every month. And it's been a extremely rewarding journey as regards doing it. But then startup journey is obviously with own kind of challenges. But the physical part and the challenge of climbing peaks with team, and that's a different challenge altogether.
Okay. And what does Boots and so tell people who are not familiar with it, what do you guys organize and who's it for? And you also mentioned somewhere, I think in one of your interviews, you're empowering people to access outdoors and climbing scene. But tell us a little bit more about that.
So it started with Bharat. So his case, he didn't have any guidance once he was going for the Everest. So a lot of problems were there as regards whom to approach, what should be the next step, what should be the roadmap if somebody wants to get into climbing. So we thought we'll get over this drawback by having a company called Boots and Crampons. So initial thing once we were there in 2020 was that we'll have focus on only big climbs in India, wherein you require boots. By boots we mean the climbing boots, and we mean crampons. Crampons are the ones which we tie on the boots for using in ice, right? So those are serious kind of climbs. Unfortunately, we didn't have as many people going for serious climbs once we were into this field. So we thought we'll get into smaller climbs and handhold people to bigger climbs as part of their plans for climbing serious mountains.
So you realize that the climbing culture needs to be built up a little more before people are ready for the bigger climbs.
Yeah. So unfortunately, in foreign countries, there are a lot of people who are into very serious climbs. They take a lot of time, preparation, training, and step by step they go forward. In India, that culture was lacking way back once we started. And our aim has been to anybody who wants to get into outdoors, trekking, mountaineering and all, they shouldn't be found wanting for information or for guidance. And that was the basis. We thought that it's like running. We realize the importance of mountaineering, and we want our families, our friends and the community as such to get into these kind of things. If you like it, you continue running or climbing. If you don't like it, there's so many other things, keep trying, but then give it a try. So that's where we come into play.
Interesting. And I think you're also doing some interesting runs as well, like the Indrahar run, which is sort of a hybrid between a climb and a run.
Absolutely. So the thing is, running, we cannot take away from a runner. It stays with you always. So what I realized was, like me, who started with running, got into mountaineering, there'll be other people too who are looking for certain aspects of, different kind of a challenge. So we came up with a thing called Summit Run. So all our runs have got one summit they have to reach.
Okay.
So generally, let's say Indrahar you mentioned, it's a 4-day trek in McLeodganj area in Himachal once somebody wants to do. So in case somebody wants to run up there or take it to the next level, we make it a 20-hour run.
Okay.
So 4 days compressed into 16 or 20 hours of run. You start from McLeodganj, you climb up there 4 levels, level 1, 2, 3. 4th level is the top of Indra's. You climb up, there's a checkpoint, you come down, and then you finish the run. More often than not, people are not able to finish it because it's that gruesome.
Right.
There've been people who've been shouting on us, not being happy, but then that's where the difficulty comes. Otherwise, if you want to run in cities, There no dearth of it. But then if you want to challenge yourself in those places wherein it's difficult even to complete in 4 days, then you do something like this crazy run. In fact, one of our teams is meeting at the Uttarakhand Tourism Department day after. They've gone for recce and they're meeting the teams there. We are working with the government to develop certain other properties in that area in Uttarakhand for such kind of runs to happen.
Amazing. And Indrahar specifically, what is the distance and what is the elevation?
So elevation for Indrahar pass comes...
Altitude isn't much of a challenge.
Altitude is a challenge for sure.
In Indrahar as well?
Yeah, it is. Okay. So that's why it takes 3 days, because the oxygen levels are less and the terrain is also technical. Last patch is very steep and rocky. So that's why it's got to be very safe, and that's why we have a criteria that not everyone can participate. Okay. You need to have a good experience.
So what's the distance like?
So it's 30 kilometers.
30.
Yeah.
And what's the climb?
So you start from 2500 odd meters, which is McLeodganj. I'm not too sure. But then the summit is 4250 meters.
Okay.
And last level 4 is the steepest. Okay. So that's where most of the challenge happens.
Right. Interesting. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful, sir. We haven't talked about your running. You're an ultra distance runner as well, and you completed La Ultra 111, in fact, with the course record for the non-ladakhi category. And in the stadium, you've done stadium runs as well. Yeah. So you've done only one 24-hour stadium run?
Yeah, I have done only one.
In which you ran 185 kilometers.
Yeah, right.
That was the run we met
exactly.
as well, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I was crewing for a few people there, and yes. We saw you in the stadium killing it. Did you win the podium?
Yeah, I was first runner-up, yes.
First runner-up. Who was the...
First was Mohanty, I think.
Oh, Pranav
Mohanty.
Got it. So yeah, in that one, I think it was the first time an Indian had crossed 200
correct.
kilometer mark.
Absolutely.
Right. It was that run. Okay. Yeah. So what is it like? What do you enjoy about making your body suffer in circles for 24 hours?
Yeah. So, in events like this, you've been a runner. So the moment you start realizing that what shit you're doing, that means you have achieved the purpose, because this thing has to hit you that, this is nonsense what you're doing, be it ultra marathon or mountains, the same way we were discussing earlier. So same thing happened in La Ultra. After a few hours of running, I was thinking, why do you need to do it, So once you start questioning these things in your mind, that means you have achieved what you had come for. So same thing happened with stadium run. After running for that loop time and again, you start questioning that, why do you need to do it? There are other things which can be done.
Yeah. So and quitting is just so easy, right? You can just walk out.
Exactly.
It's not like you're stranded without oxygen or have any chance of dying or anything. Nobody will say anything. You can just walk out, and you still don't. Yeah. So what's that mindset like?
So that mindset again, I think, comes from the army. That quitting obviously doesn't come into play. You try and push yourself.
But I mean, so what I wanted to know is there are definitely moments during a run, everybody's run, I'm sure, and in fact every adventure. So when in running that point comes where you feel that your body's hurting and maybe this is not the best day and maybe you should quit today. What do you tell yourself then? How do you overcome that?
See, once these things come...
Have you quit anything ever?
I don't think so, no. It's just that I've turned back while climbing mountains, but then it's...
Safety hazard.
Yeah, safety. Once we realize, it's suicidal, then obviously you'll not do it. Because again, the teams were involved and the stakes were not that high. We were climbing in Uttarakhand, so that time we turned back. But then otherwise, event-wise, no. Because time and again, it has happened the way you were saying, that there will be inner voices will say, you can turn back or stop it. But then I don't pay much attention to it because I know I'm not serious once I'm thinking this. Because with that mindset, I'll not be able to continue it further in life. So considering the army training, I'll give you an example. The first time it hit me, I was in Hyderabad preparing for marathons and all, and then somebody told me the main guy in Hyderabad runners is a guy called Rajesh Vecha. So Rajesh told me once for the first time, he was the one who sowed the seed saying that you should go for Boston Marathon. The moment he told me, I was clocking 4:22 that year in a marathon. I said, how the hell do you even think?
3 hours, 7 minutes or 10 minutes was the...
Yeah, for that time, I did 4:22 and my cutoff was 3:10. So that's what I thought. So it happened that I was running and for my first marathon after 4:22 was 3:30. And then next year I went again thinking that I'll do 3:10, but I did 3:28.
Okay.
And I was like, yaar, kya ho jaya 3:28?
Slow.
There's no way I'll make it. And then I prepared really hard. I had one guy who was coaching me. He was absolutely fantastic. And next year I went and I thought this year I have to kill it. But then in hindsight, you know, 328 से 310 लाना is not easy. And so I was on Pedder Road and then I realized कि एक cramp आ रहा है.
Pedder Road, Mumbai.
Mumbai 36, 37. That was the only qualifier in those times. 2016 में. Pedder Road में मेरे को cramp आ रहा है. And by that time, during the run, I met few of the army jawans. They were, you know, super fit. And I got into that pace and we got into that rhythm. He will go together. Pedder Road में cramp आया and I thought कि यार आज चाहे कुछ भी आए, cramp I'll not take it. कुछ भी हो, I'll just ignore it. So that ignore वाला thing was the first thing it happened with me. कि cramp आ रहा है, I said, you know, I'll cut that signal coming to my brain कि something like this is happening. I have to do it. And that's how I finished could manage to finish in that BQ time in Mumbai. So that thing always carried forward कि बाद में भी कभी ऐसा situation आया in a stadium run कि quit करना है. So I negated it thinking that, you know, it's just a passing phase. I'll not think about it because in the end I'll not do it. I'll not quit. Even if I come last or whatever, that's okay.
And you mentioned earlier that you were a terrible runner when you started.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. But how did you improve then?
So all my course mates in the NDA who were there way back in 94 once I joined, they really cursed me. Because of me, the squadron lost the points. Because however hard I may try, I'll never give them that competitive edge to compete with the other teams. And I was always pulling them down. But just that I kept on continuing running once everybody else gave up because of, you know, postings in certain areas they couldn't continue. And my aim was that I was enjoying the runs, you know, not pushing myself too much during the base phase of my army life, you know. अब अगर करना है तो करना है. That thing was there कि यार either you cry it or you do it. In any case, you'll have to do it. So, you know, I was continuing religiously and that gave me a good base. So once I reached Hyderabad, that I could take off well after that. So once everybody stopped, that consistency helped in taking it forward.
Okay. And when you mentioned going from 330 to 328 and then you had the target of 310 and you said you trained really hard during that time, but just broad strokes, what was the training like? Did you do intervals and stuff? Your friend who helped you training?
Yeah. So
how did you raise your game from, let's say, 330 to, and in fact, how did you go from 422 to 330?
That was easy. I'll tell you why. Because 422 was not my normal thing.
Okay.
Why it happened was I had not done any event by that time. You know, I was only training in the army and that stuff. And
so you didn't know how to pace yourself well for a marathon?
Not exactly, because how it happened was I registered for my first event thinking that I have registered for a half marathon.
Okay.
And the morning of the run I reached and then I realized that my bib ka color alag hai. And then the organizers told me that yours is a full. And I told them that, you know, give me another bib. Kya farak padta hai? Itne sare bib hai. It was my first event. I had no clue. Army mein I was running. So they said, no, you'll have to run a full only. So I thought I'll run a half. Uske baad dekhenge. I didn't know कि half के बाद it's not the same it will take. You know, it will be effort. It will be
you
more.
thought double हो जाएगा.
Yeah, I thought कि इतने में हो जाएगा. And that's where I would have otherwise finished earlier. But then 422 happened because after half was the real game it started.
Okay.
So that's why that
you hadn't trained for a marathon.
Correct.
And then so 330 happened. So 330 to 310 was tougher, right?
Yeah, it was. It took me 2 years.
Took you 2 years.
Yeah.
Of structured training under the guidance of a coach.
Proper coach, yeah.
Okay. Wonderful, sir. It's beautiful to have these conversations. Tell me one a lesson that you wish you had learned earlier in life.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So as I was mentioning, I was a very, very underperforming guy, you know, and it's difficult to believe now. At 34, it struck me sometime that, you know, my life is not heading anywhere. And this is not the way I would have loved my life once I turned 60. कि 60 साल क्या होगा लाइफ में क्या किया कुछ नहीं किया तो that struck me 34 and that's where the turning point happened. So I was a 3rd division in graduation and then I thought I'll prepare for IIT for my masters. It was a distant dream for a 3rd division guy for getting into IIT, you know. So I prepared hard and I somehow clicked it. And once I managed to get into IIT, I realized कि यार ऐसे कैसे हो गया कि मतलब how did I manage?
In an interview, you said your life. You remember your life before IIT and after IIT. So why do you say that?
Same thing. Because after IIT, I realized कि अगर मेहनत करे ना, तो कितना भी गधा हो, he can achieve it. So that confidence I got. And before that, I used to think I am working hard, but that hard was nowhere close to what actually is desired if you want to do something big and if you want to achieve your dreams. So then that was a turning point in life, and then I realized जब पढ़ाई करके 3rd division से 1st division आ सकते हैं, a poor runner who is horrible in cross country in NDA can try and make it to Boston Marathon as well. That's वो जब हुआ तो you started getting results based on your hard work. Once you start getting results, then you get more motivation because now you have tasted success. So that's where Boston happened. Then that's where triathlons happened. That's where ultra marathons happened. So that's where the difference happened.
So let's talk to the Romil of 34, right? When this transformation really happened. Somebody who's at the same life stage, who's let's say tried, feeling like they've been trying very hard in life and not getting anywhere. When you had this realization that you have to work, whatever you were thinking was hard work was not good enough, what advice would you have for somebody who's at that stage right now?
That's a very interesting one. Let me think. So, for someone like this, first and foremost is, I was working hard earlier as well. It's just that the direction was not clear. I was working hard in 10 different things. And after I decided that, I have to prepare hard for IIT, I was very much focused there. To the extent that there was a time wherein my family said that, okay, we'll go back to Delhi, you prepare well on your own and get into it. Because they realized that, the stakes were high on my personal front. I wanted my self-doubts not to stop me from what I want to achieve in life. So there was a time wherein I had a newborn. She was there with my wife in Delhi, and I was preparing day in day out for getting that entrance, because for a 3rd division guy, getting over mentally as well as academically into a IIT was a really challenging part. So that confidence I had to do by all my hard work and in the right direction.
And also at that age, like getting back to studies in your 30s
wasn't easy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wonderful, sir. What's one advice that you were given in life and you wish you hadn't followed? Is there anything?
There have been instances wherein, like my National Defense Academy days, a lot of my friends, they used to tell me that, let's have a very cool life, pass out with the rest of the batch, rather than trying anything, it's like not volunteering for anything and having a, passenger kind of a life. Ki passenger ban ke nikal jao, that is good. I wish I had not heard to that and would have, strived to work hard and be an, volunteer or taking, what do you say? Again, that like for what I did for Everest, had I not volunteered for it, I wouldn't have got it. And maximum would have happened, fail ho jate. Kya hota, ye hota. But then initially my mindset till the time I reached 34 was like a passenger. कि आराम से जिंदगी चल रही है, let it happen. But then once you start getting out of a comfort zone, that's where the difference happens.
Right. So your life has entirely been around getting out of your comfort zone and doing hard things throughout your career as well as even in studies, right? So what is it about doing hard things that changes a person's character or whatever? Why do you, in fact, in your business also is around that you're asking people to come out of their homes and do something challenging. What is it about doing hard things that...
See, it's very relative. Hard things for you may be different from hard things for me or for someone else.
Sure.
Like for me, hard thing now is sitting in front of a laptop for 12 hours a day. Which is very common for a software guy. Like in our case, in BNC, the people who climb with us, we give this band. It says my why, which is what's your purpose in life. And this we give once people are going for the summit push, because that night everyone, they'll question themselves, yaar kahan marne aage type. And that's where if they reflect on this, then their purpose will be clear. If your purpose is clear in life, like I tell this example to a lot of people, that once we do an Everest base camp, we see a lot of Sherpas carrying heavy loads. 100 kilo ka utha ke chal rahe hain, difficult terrain. Initially, you used to feel bad for them. Ki yaar, kya difficult life hai ye wo. And later on, I realized, these people must be thinking ki hamari kya difficult life hai. Ki adventure ke liye hum aisi jagah aa rahe hain, pahad chadhne ke liye. So, once your purpose is clear, you start enjoying your climbs, your mountains, your ultra marathons. Then it's not a hardship. It's fun. For us, hardship is कि सुबह से शाम तक लैपटॉप में बैठे हुए at the end of the day उसको syntax error उसका निकालने वाले और some shit like that, I would say.
No, but it becomes a comfort zone. It becomes a new. So I believe totally, whenever you try on something new, try to bring about a change, it's hard. Like a change of any kind is hard in the beginning, right? Even if it's getting up early in the morning, if you're not used to that, that can be very hard. But once you weather the initial few some time and get to a stage where it actually becomes easier, where it becomes like we've experienced this in running, right? You get to those stages where it's hard to take one more step, and then you don't give up there, and then a stage comes where you enjoy running again, as if some magic has happened, right?
Absolutely.
Similarly with making changes, a new comfort zone gets built somewhere else, but then that can also bring about your downfall later, because you have to keep reinventing yourself, keep moving ahead, and keep doing harder things. That's what you've been doing throughout.
Absolutely.
Great, sir. What a pleasure this has been. I want to end this with some advice for our audience who will be taking on 2024. So people who are on the verge of, who are feeling stuck in life and not happy with the way things are, the fitness and everything, what would be your advice? How can they go about changing their life in 2024?
It's a difficult one, because I will say, as I always mentioned, I've been lucky in life. I've got what I wanted. So it might not be applicable to all the people, and that's why it's easier for me to say that. I feel difficult to understand when people don't follow what their passion is, because it's a difficult life, a different life altogether. In my life, I've never seen or I've felt that I've worked anywhere. Army is not a work at all. It's a purpose-driven thing. You have responsibility of the people. You're doing something for the nation. You're doing something for yourself. It's a growth always. In Boots and Crampons, again, it's never a work. As commonly people say that in startup, earlier you used to work 9 to 5, you're working, 9 to 9 or 24 hours a day in a startup. But then it's never work for us, because that's what we wanted to do. It's all coming from inside. If it's not coming from inside, everybody knows that ek din marna hi hai. If you have to die somewhere, might as well do what you want in life, man. What are you waiting for, that some magic will happen? That after 3 years you will quit your job and then you will follow your passion. I'm sure everybody knows in their hearts of heart that won't happen. So if you do something which is coming from inside, then first of all, it will be very, very rewarding. Initially, I don't know how
but before rewarding, it will probably be painful once you pursue that. Maybe quit your job and try and follow that. So there will be a period where you have to weather the storm a little bit.
Ek hi zindagi hai. You have to weather the storm, man, in any case. I mean, if your 9 to 5 corporate job is giving you that happiness, go ahead and do it. But then if you feel that, you want something which is not giving you happiness, and there's something else which is giving you happiness, you cannot wait ki agle janam mein main ye follow karunga. As I said, for me, things have been falling in place, so it's easier for me to say. But it's your own judgment, and in the end, life is all about decisions. You have to compromise somewhere and then make it happen. So you have to weigh the options. For me, it's been that it has worked for me till now, so I can say it. But then that's why I'm saying it's difficult for me to understand people doing what they're not passionate about, knowing that they are here only for a certain time. Might as well do something which you enjoy doing. Compromise on some aspects where you can, maybe some money aspect or something. But then that's why I think I'll be biased based on my life.
I think that's a wallpaper that I want to have in I'm building an office, like a small studio sort of a thing in my house, and a wallpaper I want to have is you and everybody will be dead soon. So what the F are you waiting for?
Absolutely.
Do it. Yeah. So this is great, sir. But you also come across somebody who's who has such a great humility, and you're always thankful for what you have. In all the interviews that I've seen of you, and even right now you're saying things have fallen in place for me, so I can say it. But it hasn't always been like that, right? You've had hard times. It's just that your attitude seems to be that of a grateful person. So I'm just wondering which comes first, whether great things come to you first and then you become a grateful person, or is it because you're a grateful person that good things happen to you?
No, I'll not comment on that because I can't say much on that. But yeah, I've always felt that destiny is something, if you follow your things, you do your things right. Don't do anything which is wrong. So apni taraf se theek karna hai, things will fall in place, And as I say, luck, destiny आपको लेके जाएगा जहाँ जाना है. आपने अपना काम करना है. Do your work with full sincerity. Things will fall in place. At least they've done, as far as I'm concerned.
So let's end this with one last question about. So you mentioned destiny, belief quite a bit.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, are you religious?
No, I'm not.
No, you're not. Okay. Do you believe in God?
I believe in some power, which is, the way I was mentioning about the thread which I wear. And I feel, I firmly believe that this was one reason or an anchor which helped me in that time once I was getting around from the Everest. And I'm alive because of this, because of my belief that, if I'm wearing something which is given by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, then things will be fine. There have been many such instances later on in life, and I've always felt it, and I've got the power that, I'm not saying it's to do with some religious or someone to follow, but then that anchor has helped me staying grounded.
And what's destiny?
Destiny is something which will, जो होना वो होगा, जो आपने करना है वो करना है. It's not that you don't do anything and then expect results, which obviously won't happen. So do your work with 100% sincerity. Don't compromise. Don't be too lenient on yourself. Be very harsh. Wherever possible, work as hard as possible. You'll have to compromise on some aspects. I'll say the way I've compromised on, family life or peace of mind for my family. But then in the end, if you want something, you'll have to make certain compromises. And that's what life is. And that's where the destiny has led me to.
Romil sir, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Vipin. It's been great learning being here and more of an introspection journey on life. Thanks.
Maza aa gaya.
Thanks.